private, the man at the bottom of everything. You are standing on a parade ground in southern England in the autumn of 1940, and you own nothing that belongs to you. Your name is on a list. Your hair is gone. The uniform they gave you smells like the man who wore it before you, and nobody has told you where he went. You are a private, the lowest rank in the British Army. In some regiments, you are not even called that. You are a guardsman or a fusilier or a rifleman or a sapper, depending on which cap badge you drew, but the function is identical. You carry what you are told to carry. You go where you are told to go. You do not ask why. Your rifle is the Lee Enfield No. 4 Mark I, 10-round magazine, bolt action, .303 caliber. It weighs 9 pounds, and it has been the backbone of the British infantry since before your father's war. A trained rifleman can fire 20 aimed rounds per minute. You are not yet a trained rifleman. You will be. Your full kit weighs close to 60 pounds. Rifle, bayonet, entrenching tool, respirator, helmet, ammunition, water bottle, mess tin, ground sheet, rations, and everything else they hand you. You carry it because the man beside you is carrying the same, and neither of you will be the one who drops first. Basic training lasted 6 weeks. Drill, weapons handling, bayonet practice, route marches, gas mask drills, fieldcraft. By the end of it, your boots had stopped hurting. That was the only graduation ceremony that mattered. You were posted to a battalion. You joined a section of 10 men, most of whom had been there longer than you, and none of whom asked your opinion about anything. That was correct. You had no opinion worth hearing. Not yet. The British Army in 1940 was rebuilding itself after Dunkirk, where it had left behind 68,000 men and nearly all of its heavy equipment. The army you joined was not the army that would eventually win. It was the army that had to survive long enough to become that army. You were part of the raw material. Nobody remembers the private. History remembers the battles. But every battle is fought by men carrying 60 pounds through mud and fear, and every one of those men started exactly where you are standing now. Lance Corporal, 1 stripe and the beginning of something. You have been given a single chevron on your sleeve and a fire team of 4 men. The promotion did not come with a ceremony. Your corporal told you after stand down, and that was that. You are a Lance Corporal, the lowest non-commissioned rank. In some units, it is not even a substantive promotion. It is an appointment, meaning it can be taken away as easily as it was given. You lead 4 men. You are responsible for where they are, what they are doing, and whether they are alive at the end of it. You are 20 years old. Your section is built around the Bren light machine gun. The Bren is the most important weapon in the section. It fires .303 from a curved 30-round magazine mounted on top, and it is accurate, reliable, and loved by every man who has ever carried one. The section divides into 2 groups. The Bren group, 3 men, provides the fire. The rifle group, 7 men including you, provides the movement, fire, and maneuver. The Bren pins the enemy down. The rifles close in from the flank. That is the entire tactical doctrine of the British infantry section, and it works because it is simple enough to execute when everything else has gone wrong. You are in North Africa in the summer of 1942. The desert is not what you expected. It is not sand dunes from a picture book. It is flat, hard, stony ground that stretches to the horizon in every direction and offers no cover whatsoever. When the 88mm shells come in, you press yourself into the earth and discover that the earth does not want you. You learn to dig a slit trench in 20 minutes. You learn to sleep in it. You learn that the difference between the men who survive and the men who do not is often nothing more than 3 extra inches of depth. 1 stripe. 4 men. You have not done anything remarkable. You have kept them pointed in the right direction and made sure they drank their water and cleaned their weapons and stayed low when staying low was the only thing that mattered. That is the job. It is enough. Before we go further, if you've made it this far, comment what you want next. Hit that like button right now and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. We upload every single day. Corporal, the man who runs the section. 2 stripes and 10 men, and the slow understanding that 10 men is the entire world. You are the section commander. A corporal? The rank that runs the war at the level where the war is actually fought. Your platoon commander is a second lieutenant who arrived 3 weeks ago and has not yet heard a shot fired in anger. Your platoon sergeant has been here since Tobruk and knows everything. Between them, you exist. You translate orders into movement, and movement into results, and results into reports that go upward, carefully worded, because what you report shapes what the platoon believes is possible. The Bren is your responsibility. You decide where it goes, when it fires, and when it moves. When the section attacks, the Bren group goes left and the rifle group goes right, or the other way round, depending on where the cover is and where the enemy is looking. You make that decision in seconds. Nobody checks your homework. The British Army trained its NCOs to think for themselves, to adapt to the ground, and to act without waiting for permission. That independence was the reason the British infantry continued to function when communications broke down and officers became casualties, which in Normandy happened at a rate that no one had adequately planned for. A British major told a group of replacement officers that their life expectancy from the day they joined their battalion would be precisely 3 weeks. He was not exaggerating. You are in Normandy in July 1944. The bocage is hedgerow country, and every hedgerow is a defensive position. The fields are small, bordered by earthen banks, topped with dense vegetation, and the Germans have turned each one into a killing ground. You cannot see more than 50 yards in any direction. You advance one field at a time, clearing each one, and the cost of each field is measured in men you knew by name. 2 stripes, 10 men. The section holds because you hold it. That is not heroism. That is the job. Sergeant, the backbone. 3 stripes, and the platoon runs because you make it run. The officer commands. You execute. That is the architecture of the British infantry, and everyone who has been here longer than a month understands it. You are the platoon sergeant. You advise the platoon commander, manage the section commanders, handle the ammunition supply, coordinate the casualty evacuation, maintain the discipline, and solve every problem that falls between the cracks of what the manuals cover. The manuals cover very little of what actually happens. Your platoon is 36 men across 3 sections, each with a Bren gun plus a platoon headquarters with a 2-inch mortar. The mortar fires smoke, high explosive, and illumination rounds. Smoke is the most important. Smoke is what keeps your men alive when they have to cross open ground. You have learned this not from a manual, but from watching what happens when there is no smoke and men have to cross open ground anyway. You were made sergeant 9 months ago. The previous sergeant was killed at Casino. Someone had to do the job. The officer chose you because you were already doing most of it. You do not think about the previous sergeant during working hours. You think about him at other times. But those times are yours, and you do not share them. Tonight, there is a fighting patrol. 6 men out through the wire across 400 yards of broken ground to establish whether the enemy position at the farmhouse is still occupied. You plan it in your head before you touch a map. You walk through it from start to finish, finding every point where it can go wrong, and you work backwards from each failure to what needs to be different. The difference between a patrol that comes back and a patrol that does not is almost never courage. It is almost always preparation. 3 stripes, 36 men. The platoon is ready. You made it ready. Nobody will write that down. Company Sergeant Major, the Iron Center. You wear a crown on your lower sleeve and you hold a royal warrant. You are a warrant officer class 2. The company sergeant major, the most important man in a rifle company that nobody outside the army has ever heard of. The officers issue orders, the sergeants execute them. You exist in the space between, translating both directions, ensuring that the gap between what is planned and what is possible does not kill anyone. It does not have to kill. A British rifle company at full establishment is approximately 200 men. You have 130. The replacements who arrived last week have been through basic training and nothing else. They carry the rifle correctly. They do not yet know how to survive. You have been in the army 12 years, a regular before the war. You know what this battalion looked like in peacetime. You know what it looks like now. The distance between those two things is something you carry like a stone you stopped trying to put down. This morning, you need to speak to Captain Aldridge. 2 men in 2 platoon have not been sleeping. Not ordinary tiredness. Something sustained. Something that shows in the eyes in a way the newer NCOs have not yet learned to read. You have seen this pattern before. You know where it leads. You are not going to let it lead there. Captain Aldridge listens and tells you to handle it. You already have a plan. There are no operations named after you. There never will be. The company holds because of what you do before anyone notices it needs doing. That has always been enough. Second Lieutenant, the weight of the pip. You are 21 years old, and you have 1 pip on each shoulder, and 36 men whose survival depends on decisions you are about to make with less than 4 months of training behind you. You came through an officer cadet training unit, the wartime accelerated system. You learned tactics, map reading, how to write a field order. You did not learn what a platoon looks like at 3 in the morning when one of your men is quietly falling apart. Sergeant Price runs the platoon. You understood this by the end of your first week. This was not weakness. This was the most important thing you learned in the field. The British Army expected its junior officers to lead from the front. First through the breach, first over the hedge, first into the field. The man the soldiers could see when everything was worst. This produced extraordinarily high officer casualties in Normandy, and also an NCO corps trained to function without officers, which is why the system worked even when the system's most visible component was removed. You lead your platoon through the bocage south of Caen. You write the after-action report by torchlight. Your hand is shaking from the adrenaline draining out of you. You note the discrepancies, the timing that slipped, the section that went wide, the bren that jammed at the worst possible moment. You do not write about the moment when everything depended on the next 2 seconds, and you chose correctly. Price comes in when you finish. Well done, sir. That is all. And you discover it is enough. Captain, the man who commands the company. You are Captain Aldridge, 9 months commanding B Company. 200 men at full establishment. 130 on a good day. Montgomery's philosophy was simple. Let metal do it rather than flesh. Use artillery, use air power, use armor, and preserve the infantry because Britain did not have unlimited reserves of fighting men. By 1944, the British Army was running out of infantry replacements. Every company commander understood this arithmetic. You had fewer men than the mission required, and the mission did not adjust. Company Sergeant Major Dowell is the most important professional relationship of your life. You would never say that aloud. Dowell knows things before you know them. He solves problems before they reach you. He moves between officers and men with a fluency you respect completely and cannot replicate. This morning at battalion orders, a company-level advance on the 21st. Your company in the lead. You listen to the briefing without expression. Inside, you are running the calculation. Approach routes, known enemy positions, the state of your weakest platoon. What happens when the communication plan fails? Because it will. You ask 2 questions. Both are about the communication plan. Walking back through the rain, you allow yourself 30 seconds to think about what the 21st will cost. 30 seconds. You have learned to time it. Longer than that is not useful. You drink the cold tea. Carry on. Lieutenant Colonel, the man who sees the whole battalion. You command roughly 800 men at establishment. This morning, you have 560. You are Lieutenant Colonel Hargreaves, 34, young for the rank before the war, unremarkable for it now. You command from a headquarters 300 yards behind the forward companies. You have walked the forward positions twice this week. Both times your presence changed the behavior of the men you passed. The commanding officer walking the line means something, and they read from your face what that something is. Your job is to translate brigade orders into battalion reality. Brigade gives you an objective, a timeline, and resources. You distribute that across 4 rifle companies and a support company with anti-tank guns, 3-inch mortars, and a carrier platoon. You build in the contingencies that brigade's plan omits. The operation on the 21st came from division through brigade. 48 hours to prepare. You have concerns about the ground on the eastern flank. The reconnaissance does not address it. You send a note to brigade. You expect a response telling you to proceed on schedule. You will proceed on schedule. The British army that fought from Normandy to the Baltic was not the same army evacuated from Dunkirk in 1940. It had learned, sometimes slowly, sometimes at terrible cost, but it had learned. The section tactics were better. The coordination between infantry and armour was better. The use of artillery was devastating. By the time the Rhine was crossed, the British Army was arguably the most effective combined arms force it had ever fielded. You helped build that. Not through any single decision, but through the accumulation of 1,000 corrections applied over 4 years of fighting. The night before the 21st, you visit the forward aid post. You ask the medical officer about stretcher bearers, relay posts, whether the route to the rear is clear. He answers every question and then says, "We are ready, sir." You tell him you believe him because being believed is what he needs from you right now. And giving it costs you nothing. And leadership at this level is partly the work and partly the signal you send about the work. 560 men. The 21st is coming. Field Marshal, the baton, the highest rank in the British Army. Field Marshals hold their rank for life and are never formally retired. During the Second World War, the rank belonged to the men who commanded army groups and shaped the strategic direction of the entire conflict. Alan Brooke, Chief of the Imperial General Staff, managed the impossible relationship between Churchill's strategic ambitions and the army's operational realities. He absorbed Churchill's midnight harangues, his sudden enthusiasms, his interference in tactical decisions, and he redirected them into something the army could execute without destroying itself. He did this for 4 years. It nearly destroyed him instead. Montgomery received his baton after the war. He had commanded the 8th Army at El Alamein, led the ground forces on D-Day, and directed the 21st Army Group from Normandy to the Baltic. He was brilliant, vain, difficult, and indispensable. His soldiers trusted him because he never asked them to do what he had not planned for, and because he treated their lives as something that could not be spent without calculation. He was not beloved by his peers. He was beloved by his men. That distinction meant more to him than any baton. William Slim received his baton as well. He had done everything Montgomery had done in worse conditions, with fewer resources, against an enemy that did not surrender, in terrain that made Normandy look like an English garden. He rebuilt the shattered 14th Army after the retreat from Burma in 1942 and turned it into a force that inflicted on the Japanese their greatest land defeat at Imphal and Kohima in 1944. He did it without complaint and without self-promotion. The men who fought under him carried his name with a pride that time has not diminished. The baton meant everything because it represented the accumulated weight of professional soldiering carried to its highest expression. It meant nothing if the man who held it had forgotten what it cost the men at the bottom to put him in a position to hold it. The private on the parade ground in 1940, carrying 60 pounds and no opinion anyone wanted to hear, and the field marshal in 1945, holding a baton and the memory of every decision that brought him there. They are connected by a chain that runs through every rank between them. Each link carried weight the link above could not see, and the link below could not yet understand. The chain held because every link held. That is what it was like, from the bottom to the top. The weight changed, the view changed, the responsibility never got lighter, it only got wider. And the men who carried it until the war ended, or until they could not carry it anymore. Most of them never talked about it afterward. That was the British way. You did the job. You came home. You carried on.